Well, hello everybody and welcome to Jeff's Baking Blog. Today I'm going to make some chocolate digestive bars. So these are going to be little rectangles of digestive biscuit which are then coated in chocolate. And I got the idea from Marks and Spencer's. They do a little pack of these chocolate digestive bars like that, which are very tasty. And I thought, well, I can probably make something similar myself as well, so that's what I'm going to do. Milk chocolate is what I'm going to use. You could use dark chocolate, but milk chocolate goes very well with digestives. So it's not a difficult recipe, but it takes time because you have to make the biscuits, let them cool down, melt the chocolate. You can temper the chocolate, which is what I'm going to try to do, but you don't have to do that. You can just melt it and use it. And I'll explain that later. But we start off by preheating the oven to 180 degrees Celsius. That's 160 Celsius with a fan, 350 Fahrenheit. And we line a couple of trays with parchment paper or with silicone mats. So with that said, I'll go on to the ingredients. And for this I have 225 grams, which is 1.5 cups of wholemeal flour. That's 1.5 cups based on scooping packed flour into a 250 milliliter cup. I have 90 grams, 3/4 of a cup of icing sugar, and I've not bothered sifting that because we're going to process it, so any little lumps will break down. I have 125 grams, about 9 tablespoons of cold unsalted butter, which I've cut into cubes. 55 millilitres, 1/4 of a cup minus 1 teaspoon of milk, and we may not need all of that. 4 grams, 1 teaspoon of baking powder, and 3 grams, half a teaspoon of salt. And then for the chocolate, I have here 454 grams, which is 1 pound of milk chocolate, which I have cut into pieces, but I've also divided mine into 340 grams, which is 12 ounces, and then 114 grams, 4 ounces, and the 12 grams is what I'm going to melt, and the 4 grams is what I'm going to stir into the melted chocolate, and that's for the tempering process. But you could just melt the whole 1 pound and use it as it is. The purpose of the tempering is that the chocolate will set up slightly better once you've covered the biscuits, and it doesn't melt on your fingers in quite the same way. It has that little bit of a crunch to it, a firm texture to it as you bite into it. But either way will be perfectly fine. So the first thing to do is to go on to make the biscuits. And I'm just going to put the sugar, the salt and the baking powder into the wholemeal flour. And I'm going to give those a stir around, but I will also mix them around a little bit in my processor bowl of my immersion blender, just to get those distributed before we add the butter in. As you can see, there are some lumps in my icing sugar, but that's perfectly fine because as we process the mixture, those lumps will be broken down. So I'll put that into the processor bowl of my immersion blender. And I'm just going to give that a couple of pulses to get those distributed. And I'm just going to give those a couple of pulses to get the ingredients mixed together nicely. And then I'm going to add in my cold butter. And I'm going to pulse that and process it until the mixture resembles coarse breadcrumbs. And that's good like that. So then I'm going to add in most of my milk. I'm going to hold back a couple of teaspoons, maybe a tablespoon. And I'm going to process that until it starts to clump together. And if I need to use the remaining milk to make it clump, that's what I will do. And that's clumped together quite nicely. So then we need to roll that out. And so I've tipped that out, and I'm going to just flour my hands, and I'm going to squeeze that into a ball. And it's tacky, so I'm going to flour my surface. Again, I'm using the same wholemeal flour for that. And I'm going to roll that into a rectangle. And it's going to be about 1 centimetre thick, which is a scant ½ an inch. And because the dough's soft, I can push it and form it into the rectangle as I work. And that's good enough. I've straightened the top edge roughly, and I've straightened the sides. And I want to cut those into 7 centimetre strips, and then 3 centimetres wide. And then I can re-roll the remainder. So I've marked where I want to cut. So I'm just going to cut down. And then I'm going to cut my 3 centimetre strips. And I'm going to put those strips onto my baking trays, and I can re-roll the remainder to make more. And there I have them rolled out and on the baking tray. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just prick each one 8 times. You could use a fork, and I've pressed that and misshapen it. I'll do the same with all of them, and then with them pricked like that, and I've not been too precise, it's just to stop them rising too much. I'm going to put those into the oven, and I'm going to bake them for 15 to 20 minutes, just until the sides, they're baked through and the sides just begin to take on some colour. And at that stage I'll take them out of the oven and allow them to cool down, and once they've cooled down I'll come back and we'll go on to melt the chocolate ready for coating them. I baked my digestive biscuit bars for 20 minutes and I've let them cool down, and I have to confess to having eaten one already before the chocolate gets anywhere near them. But they baked up quite nicely, so now it's time to work with the chocolate. And for that I have here a pan of water which is just boiled, and I'm going to put into a pan on the top my 340 grams of chocolate, just like that, and I'm going to put that onto the heat and simmer it until that chocolate has completely melted and it's reached a temperature of about 43 degrees Celsius, which is 110 Fahrenheit. And at that stage it would be time to take it off the heat and add the remaining chocolate. Now, as I mentioned, you could, if you wanted to, melt all of the chocolate at the same time and simply use that to coat the biscuits, but I'm doing this seeded tempering method to see whether that works better. So you don't need to watch that chocolate melt. I'll come back when I have melted it and it's reached temperature. And that didn't take very long at all, and it reached temperature almost as soon as the chocolate had finished melting. So now I'm going to put in my 114 grams, and I'm going to stir that around until that has melted, and I will continue to stir until the chocolate has reduced in temperature to 27 degrees, which is about 80 degrees Fahrenheit. And at the moment it's 35 degrees, so it's going to take a while. Now you can add in a little bit more chocolate if you want to, and keep stirring, and then as it reaches temperature you can take out any lumps of chocolate that haven't melted. And if we have more chocolate here than we need to coat the biscuits, that doesn't matter, because you can just put it into a container and let it set, and you can use it another time. So my chocolate is almost at 27 degrees now, and the moment it reaches 27 degrees, I'm going to put it back onto the saucepan with the hot water in, and I'm going to stir it as the temperature rises back up to 30 degrees Celsius, 86 Fahrenheit, and that will then be ready to dip the chocolates. So I'll come back, and that will then be ready to dip the biscuits in. So I will come back once I've raised this back up to 30 degrees. So my chocolate is back up to 30 degrees. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of the biscuits and I'm going to place it into the chocolate, and then I'm going to turn it over like that, and then I'm going to pick it up and let any excess drain off. Just like that. And then I'm going to put it onto some parchment paper, and I'm going to leave that to set. And I'll just show you, as it sets, I'm going to take a fork or a skewer and just make a few little ridges in the top. So I'll do the same with all the others, and I will let them set up. And once they've all set up nicely, I can come back and show you what they look like, and we'll have a taste. So I coated all of my digestive biscuits in the chocolate, and I left them on the parchment paper until the chocolate set up. So now I'm ready to show you them. So I should say that one of the chocolates broke when I was dipping it, so I ate that. So along with the biscuit which I ate before I started dipping, that leaves me with 20, and I've cut one in half so that you can see the inside. So they've set up quite nicely, and the inside looks good, so I'll have a taste. That's very, very good. Not as sweet as the Marks and Spencer's ones, but that's fine for me. I don't like things which are overly sweet. So the lovely Digestive, and that has a lovely flavour and texture, and then that nice milk chocolate on the outside that's set up quite nicely. So this isn't a difficult recipe, but it does take a bit of time. And be aware, you don't need to do the tempering if you don't want to. I did that simply because it makes the chocolate that little bit firmer on the outside so that it doesn't melt in your fingers quite so much. So that's going to be it for this recipe. I hope you've enjoyed it. And if you have, please give me the thumbs up below and click to subscribe to my YouTube channel. In the top right hand corner of the screen there'll be an eye that you can click on, and that will take you to a link for the recipe. And I'll put a link below the video as well. And I'll be back with another recipe in the very near future. So until then, happy baking.